Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle, and welcome to the DogCo Secrets podcast. I am your host. I am also the founder of DogCo Launch, where pet care companies come to grow and scale. And today we have a really exciting episode because it is the final episode in our scaling series where I have been talking about the different revenue phases for pet care companies and how to get to those phases, how to ascend your business into the next level. Common bottlenecks you'll see, what barriers you can expect to hit on the way. This is still a developing framework for me, but it's something that I have put a lot of time into this year and I anticipate putting more time into because that's really like the summation of the entirety of what I am trying to do here with Zonko. I'm trying to help you take your business to the next level, whether that is revenue, team size, and to build it along the way in the way in which you want. I'd love to anchor us with this thought today before going into some of this content on larger pet care businesses. One thing that I like to say to my mastermind members is we can hit your targets, but there are a lot of different ways we can do that. We can hit them in a way where you will really enjoy your business, or in ways where you really won't, where you have no time freedom. You are running ragged. You're running every role of the business. And, at some point that will bottleneck you in and of yourself. But, you can be solo. And if you have the right pricing structure and the right client base and you've set it up the right way, make $150K a year. No employees. I've seen people do it. It's amazing. And you're working a lot. If that is your situation, I know how hard you're working. And the same thing applies to scaling. We can hit seven figures in a way in which you have a business that you really enjoy running, or we can hit it in a way in which it's working, but man, your hair's on fire. So today I really want to focus on not just the revenue target, even though that's a heck of an impressive number. Like if your pet care business is here, or if you are headed that way, or if this is like a dream and a future goal for you, that is so hardcore, and I'm so excited to see you do that. I just also want to emphasize today that we want to hold tension with not just the revenue goal, but how we choose to get there, because the vehicles can take us to the same destination, but there is a very different split pathway in your relationship to the business depending on how you choose to grow it. And today I hope to give some clarity on structuring to get to this level that protects you on the way to this level of growth. I know so many businesses that want to hit seven figure, and I believe you can do it, and it's going to be an awesome ride. So let's get into it. So every week so far, I've been picking a different revenue phase, breaking down common bottlenecks, breaking down what I see. So jumping into this week, which is 750,000 to seven figure, maybe to take us back to set the stage for this conversation. This has been the first year with DogCo that I have had enough companies in this size consolidated into one place where I have been able to actually start to see patterns in themes. I actually formed a group back in April called Seven-Figure DogCo. It's a place for companies that are either at or ascending to seven figures. We have 23 companies in that group right now, and we meet together once a week. And it's been really, really incredible because I've been able to just go deeper with them and to see what they're working on and to learn about all the different problems that come up at this stage. So due to the growth in the industry, we are going to see so many more companies getting to this stage, I believe, in the next 24 to 36 months. Because things aren't slowing down, they're growing. It may feel more competitive in your market. I am hearing that more. But I'm a big believer that when you feel the competition, it's also because there is a demand. If you weren't feeling the competition in your area, or if you were feeling it and then it started to ebb and flow away, that may not be a good indication. The competition indicates opportunity. So that's at least the framing I try to keep with it. Okay, so what can you expect to hit in this window in your business? First thing is going to be you're a big business at this point. You have a lot of volume. You have a lot of different services running concurrently. That does not mean that you have a wide variety of services. I see this myth sometimes go in our industry that you can't have a large business that is only dog walking, for example, or only cat care. I don't see that on my end. I work with multiple seven-figure businesses that are a dog walking only model. And they've niched and they've gotten really, really good at the few things that they do. That is totally possible. You may not be rolling out a wide variety of services. You may actually have continued to simplify and let the growth of the business be what drives the complexity. That is my preference personally. Let's let the growth bring the complexity rather than adding it and then making it more difficult to grow. At this point, you're seeing a high volume, though, of services, totally different level. So you hopefully have some admin manager structure in place. We talked a lot about that in the previous window. Last week's was 500 to 750, where at this size, you start to need true decision makers to support the interior, like daily grind of how this business is going. So at this stage, one thing that I see pretty commonly is that some of the larger businesses I work with almost have accumulated some systems debt. And I don't mean financial debt. Alex Ramosi talks about there's no way to grow your business without debt. You either grow it with time debt, financial debt, or systems debt, data debt. Like there are different kinds of debt that you can take on in your business, depending on how you choose to grow it. And at this size, I tend to see businesses have some systems debt that starts to catch up with them. Maybe we've gotten too entrenched in process and we need to actually go back to simplifying. I want to talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but your client onboarding. If we've worked really hard at your systems up until now to handle more volume and you can have multiple people that kind of tag team in and do different things like that, that's a huge win. And also, there's a risk that it has become too cumbersome for the client. And then we actually need to almost go back to basics and simplify a bit so that people still get through your process. And I see the biggest risk of this when companies have gotten larger because you start to develop like, well, we just do it this way. There's so many more people involved. It's harder to even simplify because we've worked so hard to put these systems in place. But anytime we have a system, we want to make sure that it's a system that streamlines rather than adds friction. So there's a risk of that at this size because we have more developed systems. We've just had to build them in order to continue growing. If you're a pet care business that wants to level up, then this is for you. The DogCo Business Summit is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, September 26th to the 28th. We still have tickets available, and we just announced that we are going digital. So you can get your in-person ticket or your digital ticket at dogcosummit.com. So we want to be really thoughtful of, my over-processed, how much systems debt has accrued inside the business. The second thing that I tend to see is compressed profit margins can be a risk area in the size of your business. A mindset that I encourage companies to be really, really careful with when they are smaller is this belief that as I get bigger, it'll solve any profit problems. It's like, if I could just hit seven-figure, I wouldn't have any issues with profit because there would just be more. There would be enough. And while part of that statement is true, there is more accessible to you when your business gets larger. As far as like surface area, like your total net profit, the margin tends to get compressed the bigger you get. So for a smaller company, maybe 200 to 300,000 a year, I think it's totally feasible to be in a profit margin of like 25 to 30%. That's going to be a much more difficult margin to maintain when you are at this 750 to a million mark. It's not uncommon that I have seven-figure companies that are kind of around the 15% profit margin, maybe 15 to 17%, and still have, in my perspective, really, really healthy numbers. Now, that doesn't mean we should limit ourselves. If we can have a seven-figure business and a 30% margin, that's incredible. I'm really excited about that. But it gets more difficult to protect the bigger your business gets from what I see and from the different businesses that have given me the privilege of looking at numbers and getting like deeper inside of things with them. If it feels difficult to protect profit at 200,000, that is going to be so much more difficult at seven-figure. It actually doesn't solve the problem. And that really is due to your admin costs increase so exponentially growing to this size. There are, of course, exceptions to that rule, but typically that is what I see. Okay, so those are a couple things that I see at this stage. A couple more. Word of mouth and brand recognition tends to be really, really, really strong at this size. That is overall amazing. You will start to see this, and you'll see it earlier than this stage, but I see it really start to work with companies at this stage of if you can protect that client experience and you can incentivize your clients to drive referrals, that's going to keep you at a pretty healthy growth rate as long as you continue getting referrals from your current clients and you have brand recognition. So it just makes it easier for people to know, like, and trust you because you are big enough and enough people use you for you to even be at this level of revenue that it is just easier when it comes to word of mouth, when it comes to getting your brand in front of people, because there's going to be more familiarity out in your community. Now, here is the one potential, well, there are more, but the one I want to speak to today, potential detriment, is going to be if you need to rebrand. That is difficult at any stage of a business because the real risk of a rebrand is that you lose the word of mouth association of people that are outside of your reach to immediately tell about the rebrand. And even with your current people, it can be hard to like get them on board and make sure they see the communication and things like that. But where it's really risky is the broader community where you've been like nurturing all of these warm, interested eyeballs with your old business name. And then when you convert to a new brand, they don't know who you are. You're starting all the way over. So this can be difficult at any stage. But when you have as much brand equity as you have built up, at the 750,000 to a million mark, I recommend if you are looking at your business brand right now and you know you need to rebrand it. So let's say, for example, your business has the phrase pet sitting in it and it's a goal of yours to go dog walking only. We're going to have to figure out at a minimum like a facelift to your brand. And there are a lot of positive SEO implications of putting dog walking in the name, but that'll be really confusing if you offer pet sitting now, but you're not planning to. Like, there are complexities there for sure. But we want to tackle that earlier, not later, because the later we tackle that, the more difficult it is and the more damaging because you have worked, at a seven-figure business for a long time to get your brand in front of people and to get enough people knowing about you that you could build up that kind of service volume. So that's number 3, word of mouth brand recognition, just kind of the spiraling effects of that off of the business. And then the final one that I see very often is that you can start to hit some real tech difficulties with the technology currently available in the pet care market. So it can feel like a lot of kind of bootstrapping softwares together to try and get what your business needs. The volume is a complexity and is starting to feel really difficult. I don't have a perfect solution for you here, actually. I am hopeful that there are going to be more solutions built for some of these really large pet care businesses. I'm hopeful that at some point there will be more integrations available. There will be more synchrony between sales and marketing processes than exist right now. So this is a real tension that takes creativity to navigate and that I am seeing broadly across this phase. Okay, so biggest risks I see for companies moving through this window. Because let's not limit ourselves. The goal is not just to get to 7 figures, it's to go 7 figures beyond. So, biggest risk number 1, lack of profit, too much tied up in admin. And so you can't invest in bigger systems. Maybe your personal pay suffers. I know that sounds crazy that at 7 figures that would be the case, but that profit gets really, really hard to protect. I really want to emphasize that the admin costs are at a pure cost to the business usually. They don't tend to be revenue generating, and so it gets expensive. And there may be larger investments you need to make. So, for example, there is a supplemental insurance policy that a lot of my 7-figure companies were interested in adding on this year. It was a dialogue across the group, and that policy is really expensive. It's an investment for a company to take on, but at their size, it's very wise. And when we are profit constricted and we have a really large business, some of the investments we need to make are going to be on the larger side. And so we want to make sure that the profit reflects that and protects what the business may need to have access to due to the size that they are at. So lack of profit makes it difficult to reinvest, oftentimes because it's too tied up in admin. This second piece dovetails perfectly with that. There's a risk at this stage that you have over processed the business. You've over systemed, maybe over invested in the systems. Now, I think that that actually is a really healthy flow. I think for the business to maybe really focus on operations and processes. And then you're probably going to swing into a season where it's like, okay, we might have overshot. We need to kind of reorient to things that are a little bit more simple and streamlined. I think that's a really healthy arc for the business. So I don't want you to fear over systematizing. You need to focus on systems, on processes, on SOPs, all of those things. And there's going to come a tipping point, maybe earlier than this revenue, where maybe we've swung a little bit too far that way. And I think that can happen earlier. I think for sure it can happen in this window. I talked earlier in this episode about how I think there's a real risk of that in the client onboarding process. So here's a good example. Over time, as your business has gotten to this big, beautiful size, you have come across situations where it's like, oh, that was a totally unexpected and new thing that had happened. We should include an intake question for this situation specifically. That's a very normal thing that I see happen with companies. For a while, that really serves you because it does help you be better prepared. It does help you better anticipate client needs and take action to serve them. And then all of a sudden, it becomes too much friction for the client. It's like, we used to only ask them 12 questions to onboard. Now they have to answer 40 questions to onboard. And we're seeing a real drop off in the onboarding process because we're asking for too much too soon. So that's just an example, but it is one thing that I can see when companies have accrued all of this experience is that they over process as a result. And then the client there's too much friction for them to get through, specifically in the onboarding. There are other systems this can be true of as well. One that I see is sometimes in service delivery. I actually think this was really true of my business. We had created so much process around doing the job and how an appointment should go. On the one hand, it was incredible. Like the level of standardization that I feel like my company reached before I sold it, I was incredibly proud. We worked really, really hard on that for years. But the other thing that I was kind of wrestling with when I sold the company or around the time that I did is, have we removed any individualization that also can make this kind of magical, both for the client and for the walker? This was really my concern is, have we created an environment where only perfection succeeds? So I wasn't really planning on talking about this, but these are just some internal musings. So that is something I was considering operationally is, have we overprocessed here a little bit? And is that affecting our employee retention? Is that affecting our internal disciplinary process? Have we invested a little bit too much here? And I mentioned this, but that ties directly to the risk of a lack of profit because maybe we've tied up money in admin or systems and processes that we really don't need, that maybe actually are leveraging against us a little bit. And that can be painful to come to terms with because, that may mean restructuring a position, that may mean eliminating a position. Those are never fun decisions and they're always, really painful and difficult, but they may be what the business needs you to decide to do in order to be healthy and survive. And then finally, we've talked about this at every level, but the lack of data for high-level decisions. I mentioned this in the last phase that data becomes more and more important the bigger your business gets because it's your lifeline into what's going on as the owner. Otherwise, you're a little too far removed and you don't have these hooks for good decision making. That's a risk in this area too, or at this level. It'll become very apparent. It'll be, if you don't have a pulse on the data, you'll be feeling things like, I don't know why these things are happening, or I feel this shift, but I have no idea what it's due to. And we want more clarity for you. Okay, so potential solutions. Number one, to the extent possible, being really nimble on the admin. And I would say willing to look at systems to see if you have overprocessed. That can be difficult because, like I mentioned earlier, there's so many more people connected to the system now that it can feel difficult to redesign. It can feel a little scary because it's like, these pieces we put in place served us for quite a while, but now maybe they aren't. So there can be some fear of what if I remove like the magic sauce that got us all the way here, but now maybe is constricting our growth. I see that happen a good bit. The next thing that I see is if the owner doesn't have good kind of personal self management, that tends to start becoming an issue as well, where it's like if they're disorganized, if it's hard to get projects moving through. Again, you're going to feel this at every size, but I tend to have people talk to me about it a lot more at this size, where it's like personal organization systems. Do I need to hire a personal assistant to be able to handle the workflow? We have to have visibility in the data for decision making. I think getting crystal clear about what metrics you care about and what metrics actually indicate health for you for key bottlenecks. Clearing systems debt. So going through to course correct if you have overprocessed. And I would say, especially paying attention to client onboarding, because that's where I tend to see companies overprocess the most at this stage in ways that I don't think serves them long term. All right, so we have reached the end of our scaling series. And man, I want feedback from y'all. I want to know, is this the type of thing that is helpful? What you resonated with, what you want to hear next? So tag me in social media. I'd love to hear from you. And I hope everybody has a great week.